Brian from RC Workboat Haven. Welcome to part 4 of the Gaff cutter build. In part 4, we're going to be building up a railing with scuppers. We're going to position the bowsprit cut out up forward. We're going to put in posts. We're going to be working on hatches. We're going to look at the waterline. We're going to get a coat of paint all over the model and finish it with Varathane. We've got a fair amount of work to do, and I hope you enjoy the video. Thanks for watching. So now that the hatch openings have been constructed, it's time to start working on the railing area and the scuppers. And I particularly enjoy this because it's all new territory for me with this build. I have designed 5 scuppers, and they're all the same length, and they're all an equal distance apart, about 2 1/4 inches. The overall height above the deck to the top of the rail is going to be 3/4 of an inch, and the scupper opening will be 3/8 of an inch. So I plan to build up this railing area in layers of 1/8 inch basswood. So the first thing I did was work out the position of the scuppers and spaces on the deck pattern. And I made an additional pattern for the stern area. I made all of the pieces I need by tracing out the profile on the deck and then using this modified compass and marked it. And then I cut out all the pieces with a knife. So the height of the scuppers will be 3 times 1/8 of an inch. That's 3/8 of an inch. And the rail capping will also be 3/8 of an inch. So that's another 3 layers. So I cut all the pieces out to the right profile, clamped them, and then sanded them. They're not perfect, but they're fairly even. I've made 2 temporary lines of sight here so that I can get a proper angle on the after section. The deck has been marked, so I know where to place these pieces here, and I'm going to glue them. Now in the past, I've found that if I put wood glue on a flat surface and then put a weight on it, it's liable to slide. So what I've done is use these little dressmaker pins to hold each piece just at one end until the glue sets up into a tack, and then it won't move. And my plan is to just wait until they're fairly solid after the first gluing, and then put the next piece on and work my way up all the way around the boat to 3/8 of an inch. So I'll start that process now. So I'll pick up the first piece off the quarter, and I've got a little bit of pin still projecting through. I put a moderate amount of glue on it. I set the piece back and found the pinhole. Pressed it down and set a weight on it. So that's pretty good. There's the first piece. Now as I work my way up in height here, I'm going to keep track of the curve that this build-up has in relation to the side of the hull. So I've made a small pattern here that I'll be able to place just like this and move the piece so I get the exact slope I'm looking for. So now I'll just leave that where it is, clean up the glue on the inside in a while, and let that glue tack in place. And now I've got the first one done. So let's move to number 2. Tiny bit of pin projecting through, a moderate amount of glue, a bit too much. Set it in place. And I'll put a smaller weight on this one. And now check with my small pattern. And there it is. and I'll work my way around the boat and we'll get the first layer on. And here's the first base layer with a weight on each one all the way around. Very little glue mess. So the third layer has set up nicely. I've got proper alignment everywhere here. So it looks pretty good. So I'll be able to now take out the weights and the pins. So the next step is to do the first layer of the top rail. So I have these pre-cut pieces with a curve. The idea is to set it up top here and slide it forward and aft until the curve lines up with the perimeter. Then I'm making a 90-degree cut here, and I'll use that as the first piece and then butt my other pieces next to that. So now I've got the first layer of the top section on. I have cut out an area here on the transom and put 3 ribs in. And the idea is to just lighten it up a little bit. So I hope that looks okay. Now I have scuppers here to clamp down on, so the next layer should be a bit quicker. And here's the second layer. It's being glued, it's clamped and weighted down. This model weighs in at over 20 pounds. I bought a 6-inch Lazy Susan from the hardware store and 2 bamboo cutting boards from the dollar store. And I've got a fairly nice low profile swivel here so that I can work on this model. These turnstiles are a real big help when you're building model boats. So now I have the top layer of the railing glued on. I'm going to go around now and do some sanding and check with my gauge to make sure that I've got the right slope all the way around the edge. I'll be doing some sanding and some filing on the outside and the inside just to smooth things up. I don't want to take too much off on a low spot because then I'll have to repair it on the inside and I'll have to go all the way around to make it even. So it may require some filling after I've done my roughing out sanding here. But I am looking for a little bit of tumble home on the sides of the railing. I really like this part of the build because what you do shows up so dramatically for the overall look of the boat. Now, in order to smooth up this railing on the outside and inside, I want to prime it first with latex primer and then use filler. Before I do that, I want to prepare other areas that I can prime at the same time. Now, the bowsprit is going to be 5/8 diameter dowel. I believe this is birch. And the line of the bowsprit won't be parallel to the waterline or parallel to the shear. It's going to be an extension of the height from the bow to the stern here. At this point, before I sail the boat, I don't know how much bowsprit I'm going to need. So I'm going to prepare things so that I have the option of moving the bowsprit back and forth after I've given it a trial sail. So at this point, I have located the center and I've super glued in 2 posts, and I'll give you a close-up of that now. So up forward, these 2 posts keep the bowsprit in alignment, and now I can slide it back. So using a 1/2-inch dowel and 80 grit sandpaper and some tape inside the 2 posts, I was able to sand a fairly nice groove in here for the bowsprit. And now it will fit in this area pretty nicely. So now I'll do some reinforcing on the posts and finish this area here and probably add a little piece of wood here. I'll start right here by marking a piece of 1/4 inch basswood. So now I'll try to fit this down at deck level. So here's the bow area roughed in. 1/8, 1/8, 1/16, 1/8. The reinforcement up forward. So the tops of the hatches are flush all the way around the outside. That makes it difficult to get a good paint edge. So I'm going to add a little bit of 1/8 by 1/16 trim right in here all around the hatches. Then it's going to be much easier to paint up to the underside of a lip. So now I've finished off the forward end here, sanded it. I've made a little groove in here so that I can have that as a proper barrier between paint colors. Fairly smooth all the way along the outside. It will require filler. Got the transom fairly shaped. And I have flanges, so I'll be able to paint up to that little flange. Up forward to strengthen these two posts, I put a slightly larger piece on top of the original, and it looks a little bit better. Plus, it has better alignment. So now I'm ready to put some flat white latex primer sealer all over these wood surfaces. That'll firm up the little fibers and make them a lot more easy to finish. I'll start with the hatches. I'll do the outside first, and then when that's dry, I'll just flip it and do the inside. But I want to cover all the surfaces. And here's the hull all primed up. So after the first coat of primer, I used a little bit of this standard polyfiller just to fill in some of the surface cracks. And I've just put a very small amount on, but it's fairly smooth. And I'm not really after a fine finish on my boats. They are work boats, but it's not too bad. It won't be perfect, but my boats are not perfect. I'll be the first one to admit it. So after I had sanded off this polyfiller, I gave everything another coat of primer. And it's still slightly soft, but I will have to go over and just lightly sand a few hairs here and there before the final coat. Now in the Bad Weather Ship Build series, I showed how I can make a waterline accurately by putting the boat on a flat surface. So I've done that, and I've marked the waterline here for the boat. I've made the waterline so it's just about 1/8 of an inch below this strip here. So hopefully the bottom paint will just be above the water level. Now normally I like to tape the water line with masking tape and then put a few coats of the paint on, and then when I'm coming from the opposite direction, I've got a very small little lip that I can butt my paintbrush up to. Here I'm going to have to work in reverse because there's no way I can put tape in this small area. So what I'm going to do is tape all the way along the water line, but put 2 coats of white latex on the top side of the tape, and that'll create a lip, and then I'll come up under it with my brush and put on the anti-fouling paint. Now, as with my other build videos, I bring the waterline mark just around the edge of the transom here so I can see it. Then I use a pattern and set the pattern on like this. And then mark it. And then I'll paint this on freehand after I've already got the major part of the waterline done. So now I'm ready to get some masking tape and run it along this line. And so here's the port side done. I had to back up and stretch the tape like this and get my eye sort of like in a line of sight to get this waterline straight. So I didn't really get a good video of it, but that's how I did it. And the end over here at the stern, I just ripped that off. So now we'll go around and take a crack at the other side. And here's where I have to step back and pull it. Okay, so now I've got the roll here and I am really pulling it tight. Now this section here will be white on the finished model, so I'll just give it a little bit of extra paint here. Won't hurt. So when I pull the tape off here, I'll have a lip and I can put a brush in and get a nice straight line for my anti-fouling paint. So the two coats have set up. I can remove the tape. And right here, there is a distinct lip. And I should be able to paint up to that easily. So just go along using a small brush with a flat end on it and run the paint up against that little lip. And the rest is easy. So now I have the first layer of bottom paint on. I missed a few spots, so it's going to need another coat, but it went on fairly well. The actual waterline is pretty good. There's a few little wobbles in there, but I can usually straighten that out later. I'm using a Behr paint from Home Depot, and it's called Equestrian Green. And I found that this exterior flat latex paint is pretty tough stuff, whether it's on your house or on a model. Now further up the hull, I've put masking tape just under this edge here. I'm going to be painting this black, and I've also got a bare paint for that. And I just want to make sure that I get my black paint in this little area right here, so the rest will be easier. So I'll carefully tape it and then paint that black. So I now have 2 coats of green anti-fouling paint on the bottom. I've got a few extra coats of white latex primer here, and I've painted a black railing up top. 2 coats on there. I've got 2 coats of a buff color for the deck, and I've left the hatch white on the sides. Everything looks fairly nice and even. So at this point, I'm going to get my Varathane and protect all of these surfaces with a tough plastic finish. It's certainly not meant to be permanently submerged in water, but for my radio control purposes, I find that it's just about the right combination. It's easy to patch up, and it's a very tough paint that resists scratching. And the main thing is it will protect the softer latex paint. So I'll go ahead and do that now. So now all the painted surfaces have 1 coat of Varathane. And that brings us to the end of part 4. Can you imagine the wave and wind that would push this cutter over to this angle? Well, we're going to find out. And could it even be controlled? Well, that's an unknown. In the next video, we'll be working on the rig and balance of this ship. So don't miss part 5. Thanks for watching.